The attack took place on December 7, 1941, on the Hawaiian island of Oahu. The major military installments hit included Pearl Harbor, Bellows Field, Schofield Barracks, and Wheeler Army Airfield. Previously, on December 6th, a final peace appeal is made by FDR to the Japanese emperor. Later that day, a 14-part Japanese message was intercepted by U.S. code-breaking services. The first 13 parts were deciphered and passed to the President and the Secretary of State. The next day, December 7th, the final part of the U.S. code was deciphered. It stated that all diplomatic relations were to be cut off from the U.S. Another message deciphered told the Japanese embassy to wait to tell the news to the American embassy until 1 p.m. The Americans realized that this time corresponded with early morning time in Pearl Harbor, which is several hours behind. The U.S. War Department sent out an alert for Hawaii through a commercial broadcast because Hawaii's radio contact was down. 7:02 a.m. on December 7th was the first detection of incoming planes. The two Army operators on duty at Oahu's northern shore saw the Japanese air attack through their radar. Unsure of what it was, they contacted their officer, who disregarded their report. B-17s were expected to arrive at the same time from the U.S. West Coast. Japanese diplomats did not present their war message to the Secretary of State, Cordell Hull, until 2:30 p.m. in D.C. time.
The entire Japanese force was under the command of Admiral Nakamura. Their military might included 6 carriers holding 423 planes. The Japanese attack consisted of 3 waves. The first wave of 183 aircraft arrived at the island at 7:53 a.m. This wave targeted airfields and battleships. The second wave arrived at the island around 8:45 with a force of 167 planes. These targeted remaining ships and shipyard facilities. Types of planes used were the Val dive bombers, Kate torpedo bombers, high-level bombers, and Zero fighters. Commander Michiro Fuchida led the attack with the battle cry of Tora, Tora, Tora. There was supposed to be a third wave of bombers, but it was called off by the admiral. He was unsure where aircraft carriers were located. He did not want to risk a loss. Without the third wave, the U.S. forces at Pearl Harbor were able to repair and barricade remaining defenses. The attack resulted in 2,388 Americans killed and 1,178 wounded. 19 ships sunk or were severely damaged out of 96, 92 Navy aircraft destroyed and 31 damaged, 96 Army aircraft destroyed and 128 damaged. Major battleship targets were the Vestal, Nevada, Oklahoma, Arizona, Tennessee, Maryland, and the Virginia. They were all heavily damaged. The Oklahoma had vents open for inspection, but that ended up being a fatal mistake. Its armor was left devastated from 10 torpedoes. 461 servicemen were trapped inside, and only 32 were saved. Another example of the destruction in Pearl Harbor was the sinking of the Arizona. Hit by a delayed action bomb in the forward magazine, it sunk in less than 9 minutes, and over 1,100 men died as a result. Major carrier targets, including the Lexington, Enterprise, and Saratoga, were not at the port, and they were able to avoid taking damage.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan. The United States was at peace with that nation, and at the solicitation of Japan, was still in conversation with its government and its emperor, looking toward the maintenance of peace in the Pacific.
An aerial attack was the only option because a naval attack was impossible on the harbor due to the shallow water and the single space to enter. The Japanese attack was a success for many reasons. The deciphered code did not reach Pearl Harbor to warn them until 4 hours after the attack had already begun. Radar had recently been developed, and the Japanese were able to conceal themselves with the mountains. The Japanese had spent over a year planning their attack and knew their specific target. Their timing was also very important. Pearl Harbor was not on a state of high alert. Commanders had concluded there was no reason to expect an attack based on their current information. Also, for a Sunday, most officers and crewmen were asleep. Aircraft were parked for display wingtip to wingtip. Also, it did not help that the anti-aircraft guns were unmanned and ammunition was locked up due to peacetime regulations. The oncoming U.S. B-17s were mistaken for Japanese aircraft, resulting in friendly fire. A ground attack was highly suspected from the Japanese to sweep up area defenders. Pearl Harbor was disconnected from the mainland and supplies were either destroyed or running out. The attack on Pearl Harbor was a sneak attack from the Japanese that was very successful, especially since the Japanese had so few losses. They lost 29 planes and 5 midget submarines that attempted to enter the dock. This event later affected the Japanese as a whole, involving internment camps. As a shock to the nation, this event caused as many volunteers to enlist in the Army forces. In Hawaii, the base recruitment quota was set to 1,500 men, but over 10,000 volunteered. Instead of a setback, this event ended isolationist ideals and it united the nation behind the president. December 8th, the U.S. and Britain declared war on Japan. FDR calls it a date which will live in infamy. Later on December 11th, the allies of Japan, Germany, and Italy declare war on the U.S.